This is the Apex Dad ecosystem. This is for you if you are someone who is flying at work. You are a winner. But at home, you're struggling. For want of a better word, you're losing at home. And you're not alone, because many high-performing dads are in the same boat. There's a way of fixing this, and it's not about working harder, it's about systems. This training describes how modern fathers behave under sustained professional and personal load. The purpose is to explain where pressure comes from, how it accumulates, what it disrupts, and why effort alone does not correct it. So we're going to go over concepts like professional momentum, the hidden cost of that, what men keep saying, i.e. what I hear. Then all of the challenges, from structural failure down to the ultimate risk with our family. And then we'll finish with the Apex Dad ecosystem, what you'll build, a review of what we discussed, and some summary action points. Professional momentum, winning at work. Professional performance remains high. For most men, this applies to. So work deadlines are met, even when time is constrained. Responsibility increases through promotions, team leadership, or ownership. Others rely on you for decisions, delivery, and problem solving. External feedback reinforces competence and reliability. And this produces continued output. But it also reduces the visibility of problems elsewhere because performance does not immediately decline. In other words, when you're doing really well at work, you've been doing it for years, you've worked so hard to get to where you are now, you've got momentum, and that's fantastic. But we can be blinkered, and we won't realize for years and years to come what we may have missed in other parts of our life. The hidden cost, losing at home. As work demand increases, capacity in other areas decreases. Patience at home is reduced after prolonged decision-making at work. Energy is consumed during the day and not replenished before family time. Attention shifts repeatedly between tasks without recovery periods. And evenings are spent scrolling, watching content, or disengaging rather than resting. The individual is aware of the pattern. Behaviors do not change because no mechanism exists to interrupt it. The system continues to operate. Damage accumulates without being measured. So let's just dive into that for 1 second. As I mentioned, this is not an individual problem. This is a systems problem. And in your work, your business, you have certain procedures, standard procedures that you all follow. You know what to do in every situation. There are guidelines. You even have a mission statement. But what's the mission statement for your home? What are the guidelines? This is what we're figuring out. And this is what men that I work with keep saying. The phrasing differs, but the underlying issues do not. So here's 4 common quotes that I hear a lot. I'm constantly managing everything, but something always slips. In other words, tasks are completed reactively, with no stable sense of control. Another one I hear is, no matter where I am, my attention is somewhere else. So work decisions occupy home time, while personal concerns intrude during work hours. Another common thing I hear is, the people closest to me get whatever energy is left. In other words, emotional regulation and patience are depleted before family interaction begins. And finally, a really common thing I hear is, I understand the problem, but my behavior doesn't change. In other words, I know what to do, but I don't do it. So the awareness exists, but no repeatable process exists to convert insight into action. This reflects a design issue, not a knowledge gap. The structural failure. The failure is not personal. It's not caused by laziness, by lack of care, by insufficient effort. A life with multiple demands is being managed without clear rules for how time, energy, and attention are allocated. In the absence of clear rules, the individual compensates by working harder. The compensation cannot be sustained. In order to get where you've got in life, in other words, a woman has dedicated her life to you. You've had a child with her or children. You've managed to pay bills, pay a mortgage, look after these kids, look after the missus. So obviously you are not lazy. You do not lack care or insufficient effort. You're a high achiever, but all you need to do now is balance out the effort in different parts of your life through these systems. And these are the three most common failure points. And maybe they'll sound familiar to you. The breakdown always occurs in predictable areas. The first one is, of the three, reactive days. The day is driven by messages, meetings, and requests rather than planned priorities. Decisions are made in response to interruption. No decompression is the second one. Work ends physically, but continues mentally. There's no defined pause between professional and personal roles. And finally, the third one, tactics without identity. Tools and methods are used inconsistently because they are not tied to clear behavioral standards. These issues appear repeatedly across different individuals. They are not anomalies. Permanent firefighting. When reactivity dominates, everything feels urgent. Calendars fill without regard for recovery. Messages receive immediate attention regardless of importance. Decisions are made to relieve pressure rather than serve long-term priorities. Days end with fatigue. No sense of completion is present. This state makes accurate self-assessment difficult, and urgency distorts perception. So to clear things for yourself, we use the Apex Stad quiz. And this will remove any distortion because you're going to capture how time, energy, and behavior are actually being used. There'll be a link for the quiz. It takes 2 minutes, if you haven't done it already, in the description or the show notes of this. We're almost done with the challenges that we face. No handover between roles. Work-related thinking continues after work hours. Unfinished decisions remain active in the mind. Emotional tone from work carries into family interactions. Small domestic requests trigger disproportionate reactions, like doing the dishes. Without a deliberate pause, roles overlap. Stress moves into the home environment. So you go from being the CEO, the big cheese, the fromage grande, to you get home and your missus like change the nappies, redo the bottles, or clean the bottles. And you have to accept that this is how life is and how to adapt to that. But you need a system. So the final challenge we face is hollow optimization. I'm not sure if you've heard of this term before. Attempts are made to improve efficiency, which is good, but productivity systems are started and then abandoned. Applications are downloaded but not maintained. Books and frameworks are consumed without implementation. In other words, short-term improvements occur, but they do not persist because the underlying behavior is not changed. In other words, How many times have you downloaded an app or bought a book and you don't consistently use it for a prolonged period of time or get value from it? It's like instead of going to the gym consistently for weeks, months, and years, we buy all the gym gear to look the part, and then we go until we lose our momentum, which is normally a few weeks. So that's hollow optimization. You're doing a lot around the topic instead of doing the topic or task, for want of a better word. And finally, all these challenges that we've discussed, what's the risk? The risk is children associate presence with distraction. Relationships shift toward logistics rather than connection. I'm sure you're familiar with that, parallel relationship with the missus. You feel like you're housemates instead of lovers. Health deteriorates through poor sleep and chronic stress because you've taken everything from work into the home. And regret forms slowly rather than dramatically. This progression occurs without crisis. So that final point, regret forms slowly rather than dramatically. You won't realize it, but the things that are happening now, these little leaks in our life, we'll look back in 20 years and be like, I should have not been on my phone so much. I should have played with them a bit more. When they said, Daddy, can you wrestle? Beat a monster? Oh yeah, I'll do it in a minute. I'm just sending this email. They add up. Because there will come a day, if it hasn't already with you, where they don't ask you to wrestle or beat a monster anymore. I think about it myself a lot. But it's not easy. That's why we have, drum roll please, the Apex Dad ecosystem. It's the good stuff. Action. The Apex Dad ecosystem defines rules for managing time, energy, and attention. It replaces reliance on personal capacity with repeatable processes. It consists of specific practices applied consistently. My tea's run out. So, we have 5 parts of this ecosystem. The first one is time allocation. For example, work is scheduled between 8:30 and 5:30, Monday to Friday. This might mean, for me, because I work from home, or I work from here, the garden room, no matter what, I am here at a specific time. It doesn't matter what's going on in the house, unless someone is sick or there's an emergency. And that, funnily enough, I'm a bit embarrassed to say this, was decided by my wife. Because my habit is to be like, I'll look after you if you need a hand with the nappies or this, that, and the other. But I got to work to make money, and she knows that. So she is very good by not only helping me allocate time to my work, but sticking to it. So there's a hard stop alarm that goes off to begin shutdown. In other words, so I have a timer on my computer. I can't show you, but it times when I'm working, when I'm not. And essentially, when I get up from my desk to do something that's not work, I press the timer and it will stop. And essentially, it will clock up how many hours I've done. But at a certain time, that timer goes as an alarm and says, you've got 15 minutes left before your work is done. It's very interesting because you can see then, oh, right, I've worked 8 hours today, but how much have I actually been at my desk? This means not only is time allocated to your work, time's allocated to after work as well. So when you get home, say 5:30 to 7:30, that's family time. And our bedtime for the kids is 7:30 at the moment. And then depends how long bedtime takes, at the moment it's like hour and a half for our youngest to get him to sleep. But after that's done, you can, if your kids are old enough, go for a walk. But at the moment, ours are not old enough. You can do some reading, have some time with the missus. Maybe you switch off and watch some Netflix. But work apps are blocked after 5:30 using phone restrictions. Now, I'm not promoting anything because I have no affiliation, but there is an app called Brick and an actual physical device called a Brick. And this device, you can leave it in work. And when you're not in work, you can't use certain apps. So let's say, for example, your whichever email provider you use, say Gmail. You can say on Brick, right, after 5:30, block Gmail. And when you leave your work, that physical brick that's left in work means that because you're not there, you can't access Gmail until you're back in work again, for example. The result is work cannot leak because there is nowhere for it to go. So that's number one, time allocation. Number two, role transition. For example, end of work checklist, which takes 5 minutes. Write tomorrow's top 3 priorities. Capture unresolved decisions in a notes app. Close your laptop, stand up. 60 seconds of stillness or breath before leaving the room. And a good physical cue is change clothes or wash hands immediately after. What I mean by that, it may seem a bit crazy, but when you get home, stick on the joggers. Stick on your comfortable clothes or your civilian clothes, if you will, if you wear a suit to work. Yeah, if you're a manual worker, clean up, have a shower when you get home. Right? There needs to be a ritual that tells you, all right, now I'm home, it's time to switch off, it's time to relax. And that physical cue of changing your clothes or having a wash is really going to help. The result is mental residue stays with work. It doesn't follow you into the kitchen. So number 3 is decision handling. Decisions are batched. For me, the morning between when I start work and lunch is my creative time, for like doing this. The afternoon is admin time, when I don't have as much cognitive power or willpower to be creative. More low-level tasks. Anything outside of those windows is parked, unless there's an emergency. And that could be with your colleague, or if you work on your own like I do, it could be with your family. Messages that invite decisions are flagged, not answered. So between these times, when I get an email or a DM, I do not reply. I flag it and I park it for any time outside of these hours. And that could fall into admin. The result is the brain stops being hijacked all day by just one more thing. Okay, last 2 things in the ecosystem. Energy maintenance. For example, weekly non-negotiables. Minimum 7 hours sleep average. Now, if you have the luxury, in other words, your kids are not still waking you up, then this should be a non-negotiable. Now, if you can't sleep well, even though you haven't got any kids, then other things need to be looked at. That's a conversation for another day. 8,000 steps per day minimum. And protein target 5 days out of 7. In other words, eat 1 gram of protein per pound of your body weight. And every Sunday, check if sleep drops, earlier bedtime is enforced. If steps drop, calendar walk is added. So you stick it in the diary. And if nutrition slips, meals are simplified. I eat the same thing pretty much every day, which is normally rice, beef, and eggs. That's my go-to meal. And the result is you correct early instead of waiting until patience disappears. Finally, behavior standards. For example, phone stays out of reach during meals. So we don't have our phone in the dining room. No work email replies after dinner. And when interrupted, you pause, acknowledge, respond without irritation. A raised voice equals automatic disengagement and reset. So, it's so easy, and I'm guilty of this, when you do a work task at home. So let's say, for example, something is urgent. Someone needs to know something straight away, and it's before your dinner time, which is reasonable. You are responding, and one of your kids interrupts you. Don't shout. Now, I don't care, and I was the same way. Your parents may have shouted, you may even beat you growing up, but we don't want to carry it onto our kids. Because if we shout at our kids, and we can't tell them off then for shouting, because these children will be what they see. Instead, when I say automatic disengagement and reset, I mean take a breath. So my eldest daughter, in school, they actually teach them when something bad happens, someone makes you feel angry, you take a deep breath before you respond, which is really cool. We didn't have that back in our day. The result is you don't rely on mood to decide how you behave. You have your system. Okay, that ecosystem is only as good as the reviews you do of it. Because we always want to be refining it and seeing how we can improve. So the ongoing view, 20-minute weekly review every Sunday. Did work overrun? Was sleep protected? Any behavior standards broken? And one adjustment is chosen for the following week. No self-criticism, only correction. Now, I'll give an example here. So Sundays, we go to my mum's for a Sunday roast. She lives down the road. And this is something we do every single Sunday. But when we go, this is one of the few times that me and my wife can actually talk to each other without the kids there, because the kids are with the grandparents. And we will talk about the week that we had. And it's become a ritual now. At the time, it felt a bit awkward and a bit forced. But for example, last week, I said to my missus, I bought her an alarm clock because she was going on her phone a lot while we're in bed. And the problem is you might be looking at your phone for the time, but then you notice a message, a notification. So I said to her, we need to not do phones in the bedroom. And it's an awkward conversation, but I'm holding her accountable the same way she holds me accountable for not being on my phone doing work when the kids want to play. And that was one adjustment that we chose. We didn't try to overhaul the whole thing. Oh, there's this thing and then this thing, there's this thing. Just one. And each week we pick one. The result is the system evolves and the man doesn't burn out. Each element reduces reliance on self-control, and together they limit how pressure spreads. So by implementing this system, this is what we'll build. The result is repeatable operating approach. A weekly schedule that prevents work from consuming evenings, a consistent end-of-day shutdown that improves presence at home, simple daily routines that stabilize energy, and clear behavioral rules that apply when tired or stressed. The system functions through consistency, not intensity. Without review, drift goes unnoticed. Review is used to detect drift early. The following areas are checked weekly. Our time use, in other words, planned versus actual work hours, like I talked about with the timer. Family time and recovery time. So are we spending time with the family, those 2 hours in the evening? And when we are relaxing, are we scrolling on our phone while watching Netflix? Are we watching things that are stimulating us too much? Maybe you're into crime thrillers and then you get all amped up. It should be a recovery time. So it might be, like me and Mrs. went for a phase of not watching TV at all. And this is before we had multiple children. Now we're only able for a bit of Netflix, if we're allowed to watch it, if our kids will go to sleep. But recovery time should be something relaxing. So we like to watch funny things that make us laugh. Obviously I do the old rom-com here and there when I lose the Netflix negotiation. But it should be something that replenishes you and calms you down. Check energy. So sleep duration, and I use my Whoop for that, my Whoop band. Perceived fatigue and recovery quality. In other words, when you wake up in the morning, ask yourself, how do I feel? Do I feel rested? Do I feel like I've recovered? And the last two things, boundary breaches, instances where work has crossed into family time. And finally, behavior, repeated reactions or actions that contradict stated standards. So you need, the same way you've got a mission statement at work, what's your mission statement for your home? And are your actions reflecting that? So the review is a factual, it's not judgmental. So just a very quick overview of actions, and we're done. Consistency over intensity. Action is based on what the review reveals. The following actions are taken deliberately. Baseline assessment. Complete the Apex Dad quiz to document current behavior, energy, and time. How do you use your time? And how you do that, the quiz, is click the link in the description or the show notes. 2-minute quiz, you haven't done it already. Do it. Boundary definition. Set fixed work end times and non-negotiable family periods. Transition practice. In other words, implement a consistent end of work routine to reduce mental carryover. So that could be changing the clothes, having a shower, wherever it needs to be. Decision capture. Record unfinished decisions instead of holding them mentally. So write down what needs to be done the next day instead of thinking I'll chip away at this when I get home. And finally, behavior reinforcement. Apply predefined standards consistently, especially when tired. These actions reduce variability. There will be some bumps along the road. We want to be as prepared for the journey as possible. You see my journey road metaphor here. The first step is an accurate starting point. And that's where the Apex Dad quiz comes in. So complete this to establish a baseline before any correction is attempted. Before you go at a job, you need to assess it first. Now, as I say, measure twice, cut once. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening.